Hi, I'm Dr. Thomas Morgan and I'm the lead researcher on the paper The Development of Adaptive Conformity in Young Children, Effects of Uncertainty and Consensus. So we were interested in when children rely on the decisions of other people at the expense of their own information, and if they can do so in such a way that their overall accuracy is improved. So this study was informed by both developmental psychological research looking at the trust of young children, but also work from cultural evolution, which is an evolutionary approach to how individuals share information and the effect this has on culture. So we were interested in two particular variables on the reliance of young children on the decisions of others. The first was uncertainty. Existing research shows that young children will seek out the decisions of other people and use the information available when they have not received any information themselves. However, there is little research currently looking at whether children are sensitive to the quality of their own information and if they can use their sense of certainty to guide themselves in estimating this quality and go on to use this to inform their decision making. The second variable we are interested in is consensus, so the level of agreement between a group of individuals. Whilst current work shows that children are sensitive to a consensus and will favour individuals who are part of the majority, there's no research looking at how children respond to varying levels of consensus among groups. In particular, we were interested in the learning rule conformist transmission from cultural evolutionary theory. This learning rule stipulates that whilst a learner should become more influenced as the size of the majority increases, a learner should actually be greatly over-influenced by small majorities, for example 60 versus 40%. This doesn't mean that you're more influenced by small majorities than you are by large majorities. It just means the difference between the two isn't that great. This learning rule is predicted by cultural evolutionary theory, and it's of particular interest to us as it leads to the homogenization of behaviour within groups. So a group of conformist individuals will all behave the same as each other. Therefore, this learning rule is believed to lie behind the development of the cultural differences between groups of populations, for example, styles of dress. So to investigate these two variables, we carried out an experiment in which children first took part in the Who Has More task. In this task, children are shown two characters, Big Bird and Grover, each of whom have some dots, and it's up to the child to decide who has the most dots. We manipulated the difficulty of the trial by changing the number of dots that the two characters had. When the number of dots each character had was very similar, the trial becomes very difficult, and we were hoping that this would induce a state of uncertainty in the children. And then if they are sensitive to uncertainty when it comes to trust, they should then increase their reliance on the decisions of other people. After children had seen the dots and made their own decision, they then watched a video containing a group of 10 informants who were asked for their opinions and gave them to the child. After this, the child went on to make their final decision, incorporating what they had learned both themselves and from the video. The 10 informants in the video were arranged in every possible configuration. So sometimes, say, 8 of them agreed with the child and 2 disagreed, but every other combination was possible. So sometimes they agreed with the child overall, other times they disagreed with them. Our results found that children of any age were not particularly sensitive to the quality of their own information. So all children were slightly more likely to copy the informants in the video on harder trials than they were on easier trials, but this wasn't a very powerful effect. What was a more powerful effect was a sticking tendency that grew with age, such that the older children were quite resistant to changing their mind, even when a lot of the informants in the video disagreed with them. This is interesting as it suggests that children of any age aren't particularly effective at using the quality of the information that they have received to guide estimates of their uncertainty and to then use this to respond appropriately to the information offered by other individuals. However, it is interesting to note that it matches quite closely the behaviour of adults who have also been observed to overweight their own information when combining it with the decisions of other individuals. The response to consensus also changed with age. The young children were only influenced by total majorities, so 10 informants making one decision and none of the informants making the other decision. If there was any level of disagreement at all within the informants, the youngest children seemed to take no notice whatsoever of their decisions. So this suggests that to the young children, although they presumably could notice that, for example, 8 informants was greater than 2 informants, they couldn't use this effectively to guide their decision making, as they didn't understand how to respond to it correctly. However, the older children steadily showed the conformist transmission pattern predicted by cultural evolutionary theory. So the older children were influenced by a majority of any size, but their response to small majorities, for example 6 versus 4, was enlarged compared to what one might expect. So in conclusion, whilst the behaviour of the young children was quite insensitive to the variables we investigated, as children aged, they became increasingly sensitive to these variables, and the behaviour matches ultimately the predictions of evolutionary theory, but also the behaviour of adults.